call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Whenever I found myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially when my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I account it high time to go to the sea as soon as I can.
Year before his whale book surfaced, Melville wrote, "It is hard to be finite upon an infinite subject, and all subjects are infinite." I actually know some finite subjects, but Moby-Dick isn't one of them. I'm Bob Chipka, who 4 decades ago wrote almost half a doctoral dissertation on Moby-Dick. The other half, which became the whole, talked of Tristram Shandy. My spin in the whale's maelstrom drove me, like many scholars, like Ahab himself, a bit delirious. I consulted a Honolulu expert about the etymology's final entries, Fiji, Piki Nui Nui, Aromangoan, Pihi Nui Nui, suspecting some arcane witticism in the K to H toggle. But my would-be dissertation didn't care about linguistics. It wallowed in what I still love, how Ishmael's sole survivor compulsion to leave nothing untold generates an all-you-can-read buffet of objects of attention, angles of vision, and tonalities. This novel's single-stream recycling of other texts and genres quintessentializes for me the novel's way of swallowing, to use the Jonah metaphor, anything and everything. It's beautifully weird on every level. Maximalist sentences ring with Melville's rediscovery of Shakespeare and scripture, his love of encyclopedists, natural historians, highfalutin philosophers and preachers, down and dirty jokesters, cultured cosmopolites, and folksy yarn spinners. Anatomizing chapters hector and vector every which way to put minds through way-out mazes with no way out. The overall trajectory hybridizes monomania with multiplicity, a story urgent and pointed as a harpoon. Single white man seeks singular white whale for denouement melee, is suspended by a digressive, dilatory uncoiling of narratorial knots and splices. Is there a book that magnetizes and mesmerizes, tangles and trepans readers in more disparate and you would have thought incompatible ways? An infinite subject indeed. Find it as serious, moving, tragic, romantic, profound as you wish, but first and last, what wondrous, wordy fun.
What do I love about Moby-Dick? Frankly, the Moby-Dick Marathon at the Provincetown Public Library. It's been such a source of comfort and inspiration over the years. I thank everyone at the library who's made this happen, especially Brittany Taylor and her devotion and dedication to bringing the town together in a community event. And I really miss being by the Rose Dorothea with a loving and devoted audience, listening to the novel being read aloud by wonderful voices from all over town and my neighbors. And I miss the community. And I applaud the library for continuing this in whatever fashion can be done during these challenging times, and my gratitude and kudos to Amy Davies for creating the virtual Moby-Dick Marathon with Brittany and the team last year. May we all be together again soon. Keep the faith.
Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. in the last 20 years, I would say that people do have a feeling of, have we pushed the planet too far for our own good? So the idea that the captain was pushing the Pequod too far for the crew's own good, I think really resonates. And resonates with me, because we are that close. It's a miracle to be able to go out to the coast and see 150 or 160 whales, which Sewell and I just saw this morning, at noonish anyway, and realize that they're making a comeback, the right whales. But they're coming back from 10 to 110. You know, we really messed things up as far as thinking sustainably. There's nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree, sometime or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings towards the ocean with me. There now is your insular city of the Manhattoes, belted around by wharves, as Indian Isles by coral reefs. Commerce surrounds it with her surf. Right and left, the streets take you waterward. Its extreme downtown is the Battery, where that noble mole is washed by waves and cooled by breezes, which a few hours previous were out of sight of land. Look at the crowd of water gazers there.
If you walk out on a dock and just stand there and look around, I think you can feel just like Melville did in the beginning of the book about walking around the docks of Manhattan and wondering, look at all these people that just stare at the ocean. What is it about man and the ocean? What water and meditation are wedded, I think is how he puts it. And that idea that there's a world out there to explore rather than exploit, I think everybody can relate to that.
Okay, here we are, Moby-Dick Marathon once again. Now, last year I sent a video for the Moby-Dick Marathon from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, at Herman Melville's house, where Herman Melville wrote Moby-Dick. But now, here we are, Bourbon Street, New Orleans. This is New Orleans, baby. So, we were told to explain why we love Moby-Dick, why to read Moby-Dick. I can't even find him, man. Now, in my personal opinion, Tolstoy is the best. War and Peace, Anna Karenina. I think Tolstoy is the best. But Moby-Dick is my favorite. And I just love Moby-Dick. And I just finished my fourth read of Moby-Dick. And look, this is Bourbon Street, everybody. And so, I just finished my fourth read of Moby-Dick. And the thing about this book is, every time you read it, it gets better. It gets better every time. And then the part that I have been enjoying the most recently is when the Pequod encounters all of the other boats out in the seas. And then half the ships are guys from Nantucket. And then Ahab knows the captain and all this stuff. But the funny thing about that part, these parts that I love so much, is that that's how we learn about Moby Dick. That's how we learn about Moby Dick. And then towards the end of the book, the last 30 pages, they keep meeting these ships, and then I can't remember their names, and then we find that the Moby Dick had killed 7 men, and then the ships were crashed, and then Moby Dick, and then and that whole thing is fun. So that's been my that's the part I've been enjoying the most recently. But why do we read Moby Dick? Because Moby Dick has everything. Moby Dick has everything in life. I think of the Holy Bible, that Christian thing. There's nothing in that book. Have you ever read that before? Have you ever sat down and read it? Forget it! Moby Dick has everything. So everybody, that's Moby Dick, and thank you to the Provincetown Library for hosting this Moby Dick Marathon, and this is the best thing. So And it just so happens that I'm here on Bourbon Street, so you all can just see how crazy it is here.
How'd you write about whales after Moby-Dick? I mean, it's impossible. How'd you do that? And I'm not a scientist, but I started hanging out with people like you. And indeed, it was when we came back with the BBC film crew to film this documentary about the making of Moby-Dick that I met you. And that was another really momentous time for me, because suddenly, before that, I felt like a kind of an outsider on the whale watch boats, this kind of weird limey, asking questions, taking photographs and being a bit of a pest. But you brought me into that culture, and I suddenly realised, oh no, this is the Moby-Dick of our age. You know, these whale watch boats are just like the whaling boats of the Yankee whaling days. There was a direct analogy. And you introduced me to that culture of the captains, you introduced me to the captains themselves, who were very like the crew of the Pequod. You showed me the vocabulary, you showed me a list of kind of slang expressions used around whale watching. So you really brought me into that culture, and that's what really, for me, cemented that relationship.
So, the book, of course, we should mention you've written a series of books prior to these more current works, Social History, History of England, Oscar Wilde, Stephen Tennant, and so on. But the book The Whale, why don't you talk a little bit about that book, the genesis of it, the development of it?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it was born out of my love of New England and my fascination with the kind of romance of New England, which I don't think that's a fantastical idea. I think there's a real romance about this part of America, which is deeply connected to its history. I mean, you and I are both friends with Stormy Mayer. His family go back to 1650. I mean, it's astonishing. So that history, the past is implicit in this place. You feel it in the streets, especially in wintertime when the bones of Provincetown emerge, really, and you see the architecture, you see the way Norman Mailer wrote in the 1940s of walking down Commercial Street by night, by moonlight, and he felt he was walking back into the 18th century. And for all the sort of modern restaurants and cars and everything, you can still feel that connection, I think, in Provincetown. So for me, writing about the whale, writing about Moby-Dick and writing about Melville was tied up in this sense of a place that lives on in the present and in the future as well, but through the past. So I began my book very much about my experiences in Provincetown, about hanging out with you, about being on the whale watch, the culture of the whale watch, and then I moved backwards from that to look at how that reflected on Melville's experience. And of course, Melville sailed from New Bedford, where you and I were reading a couple of weekends ago on their marathon reading of Moby-Dick. And I mean, he knew this place. I mean, he knew this place very well.
We should mention that book, your first book about whales, won the Samuel Johnson Award for nonfiction. What year?
That was 2009.
2009. And you followed up with another book called The Sea Inside.
Yeah.
And how, can you tell us a little bit about that book, The Sea Inside?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, that takes the story on, really. It's quite a digressive book. I mean, by now, I've been infected by Melville's appalling digression, really. I mean, the way that, I mean, anyone who knows Moby-Dick knows that it just takes you off on mad tangents everywhere. You almost lose the narrative of that book. It just goes on, off on its own way. And inspired by Melville's example, I thought, well, if he can get away with it, maybe I can. So The Sea Inside is a digressive journey from islands to the remotest part of the world. Really, I ended up in the Pacific Ocean in New Zealand, visiting places like Sri Lanka and Tasmania, and really looking at the way we, as human beings, relate to the sea from a sense of the meeting of natural history and human history. So that's a very freighted and problematic relationship, as you know, and that's a lot of what you work with.
Right, right. So let's talk about that a little bit, because in our lifetimes, the whale has shifted from a commodity to the icon of the natural world. This happened in our lifetimes. So we need to think about whales and what whales are. And you and I have talked a lot about this, what the whale symbolizes, what we make of it. You have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, I don't think there's any more extraordinary relationship in the natural world than between humans and whales. Because of that sense of exploitation, which went on for centuries, and is predated by the whale as the creature of creation myth, really. It's the foundation of many indigenous people's beliefs. You know, it's there in the Bible from Genesis onwards. It's Jonah, it's in the Quran. Pinocchio was swallowed by a whale, you know. Nowadays we have Free Willy and Blackfish, a real update on what the whale means to us in the modern day. And you're so right to cite that, because it's a kind of extraordinary psychic shift in attitudes which happens within yours and my generation. You know, I mean, when you and I were growing up, people were eating whales. And then suddenly, wham, Roger Payne and Scott McVeigh lower a hydrophone into the water off Bermuda and record Song of the Humpback Whale. Well, that's the instant at which it changed, because I think up until that point, this animal had been dumb and unable to protest what we inflicted on it, but suddenly this animal had a voice, and it was not only a voice, it was a melodious sort of threnody of a voice, so something that spoke to its plight and what we'd done to it, really. So from that moment on, and of course that was famously released as an album in 1970, was up there in the album charts along with David Bowie, you know, and became a kind of a cri de coeur, a call for action for all those new environmental movements like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth. That was the first real movement. I mean, obviously following on from Rachel Carson, great New England writer, you know, and her example, her writing about the sea and about nature. And so we're still dealing with that extraordinary step change in the way we see the natural world. And so I think, you know, I think that's why a book like Moby-Dick has this prophetic power. It's still exploding on us. I mean, Melville was writing in 1851, but he was imagining a point at which possibly the whale might go extinct. He was talking about a drowned world, for instance. So I think all these things, this sense of the not knowing of these animals as well, as huge as they are. You and I have seen whales so many times in these waters out here, fin whales and humpbacks and minkies, but you'll never really, I'm not actually sometimes sure that we've actually seen the animals. You know, a fin whale that's sliding through the water, this enigmatic, razor-backed animal, the fastest of all the whales, you know. The humpback, which does breach and has all this sort of surface behaviour, but even so there's a distance between us, isn't there?
Ah, yes, there we see it, the great sperm whale. Here we are. Here we are in Arrowhead, the Moby-Dick Marathon, and I just happened to be out in the Berkshires when this all happened. And so, so I came down here to Arrowhead, and so here we have, this is Herman Melville's home. From 1850 until 1863. So Melville lived here when he wrote Moby-Dick. And this place is called Arrowhead, as everybody knows, because he kept finding arrowheads out in the fields. Now, One interesting thing about this place is Melville dedicated Moby-Dick to Nathaniel Hawthorne. And Hawthorne lived around here somewhere. So these guys were like Berkshire's guys. But then Washington Irving lived in the Catskills, right around the corner. And then Henry Thoreau loved to come out here. Thoreau loved Greylock. So there was like this scene of these really hip guys out here writing some great stuff. So anyways, I was gonna do my reading here, but too much traffic, so I can't. But anyways, there's a nice little look. Let's get a farther look away. Of Arrowhead.
I'm on the Board of Library Trustees for the Provincetown Public Library, and we decided, Stephen Borkowski championed bringing Moby-Dick to our community. There's a Moby-Dick marathon that's done around the world. And so when Berta heard about this, she said, wow, let's do a show, let's do a whale show. And it ended up being well over 35 artists in the community that contributed to this monumental show. And a portion of the proceeds does go to the library fund.
There were a couple things that pulled this piece out of my studio to me to use. I guess what I was looking for was a lot of blue to really, really emphasize the watery part of this whole novel. And then I thought, what else could kind of relate to that? And I thought, well, you know, the whale was white, so why not use this piece right here that I chose that has the white oar, kind of symbolic, kind of referencing the white whale.
I chose to do a series of whales. I did about 12 of them in 2014, and this being one of them. And what I was concerned with was conveying the whale in a state of freedom breaching that was outside of our history of whaling and capturing and using the whale. And the whale is now, of course, endangered. And so my interest was sort of putting them in their own sort of wild, free environment. We're really lucky to be in their presence. There's something very mystical about that. I like knowing that they're out there, that we're close to them.
Berta asked for whale paintings, and so I decided to do this one, and it's just the forward part of the whale. The rest of it was too big to have the whole thing in. And I'm familiar with whales because I lived on the ocean in Wellfleet.
It's a book that takes quite some time to read, but it's a wonderful book. What always stayed in my mind was the situations that are described of how the whales surrounding the boats at times, and the sharks and other fish, and the turbulence of the water.
It allowed for a cross-cultural experience. People love to hear oral storytelling. And so this Moby-Dick Marathon wasn't just literature, it was also art, and it also was the Center for Coastal Studies. And so to have that cross-discipline of art and science and literature really speaks to the art colony that we are.
Well, I thought it was a wonderful idea to have the reading, and to have it at the library was just an ideal space.
Healthy boy with a robust, healthy soul in him, at some time or other, crazy to go to sea.
Oh, it's a really interesting show. I think it's interesting that it's both whales and fishing. And I was just in back of the gallery looking at Arthur Cohn's painting of a fishing boat. It's a terrific painting. And also, it's interesting that it's a show in the gallery where she's showing not only gallery artists, but lots of other artists who have an interest in whales. And that makes, I think, for a more interesting show for the public.
absolutely incredible to be able to be a part of something like this, to be a part of the lineage, once again, the history of Provincetown and Provincetown painters, you know, and being here at Berta Walker is just all amazing. So it's a really great feeling for me just to be a part of the community itself and having a chance to give.
Searching for the white whale, having this obsession, having this, in a way, unattainable goal is such an incredible metaphor for being an artist. And I think that all artists can relate to this thing. We're all searching for our white whale. We're out there, and you know, we're actually often wrestling with the idea that it might destroy us, because being an artist, it supports a lot of your core soul needs, you know, those parts of the sustaining of life, but it really flies in the face of like common sense needs of how you live and how you survive and how you make a life for yourself. And artists are constantly facing this difficult judgment call. Do they chase the white whale? Do they just go after the easy to catch whales? What kind of whales are we searching for?
So it just so happens that right now I am in Williamstown, Massachusetts, the far, far northwest corner, as far as you can be from Provincetown and still be in Massachusetts. And then so we all know that Melville lived out here when he wrote Moby-Dick. He lived in Pittsfield. And so the story goes that as part of his spiritual information for the power of the whale was Mount Greylock. This powerful backbone that you see here right in the center of the Berkshires. And so isn't this wonderful? How inspiring and wonderful. And so here, what I have done is I have taken chapter 31. It's called Queen Mab. And then what I did is I omit needless words, yes? And I cut the chapter down to its absolute minimum. And then I put it to music. And so I call this song Stubbs' Queer Dream. The next morning, Stubbs said to Flask, such a queer dream I never had. The old man's ivory leg, well, I dreamed they kicked me. And then, when I tried to kick back, I kicked my leg right off. And then presto, Ahab seems like a pyramid, and like a blazing fool, I kept kicking at it. But you know, now I think, what's his leg but a cane? A whalebone cane. It was only a playful cudgeling, a whaleboning that he gave me. But now comes the greatest joke of the dream. While I was battering away at the pyramid, a sort of badger-haired old merman with a hump on his back, he takes me by the shoulder. And I say, what business is it of yours, Mr. Humpback? Do you want to kick? And he turned his stern around to me, bent over and dragging a pile of seaweed. And thunder alive, man, his stern was filled with marlin spikes, with the points out. Oh, says I on second thought, I guess I won't be kicking you, old fellow. Wise Stubbs, said he, wise Stubbs. Wise Stubbs, said he, wise Stubbs. And I thought I might as well fall to kicking the pyramid again. And then he shouts at me, stop that kicking. Hello, I say, what's the matter now, old fellow? And he says, look here, ye, let's argue the insults. He used his ivory leg, didn't he? Yes, he did, says I. Well then, says he. to complain of. It wasn't a common pitch pine leg that he kicked you with, was it? No, 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 you were kicked by a great man with a beautiful ivory leg stub. It's an honor. In old England, the greatest lords think it a great glory to be slapped by a queen. But your boast of is that you were kicked by old Ahab and made a wise man of. Don't you see that pyramid? Don't you see that pyramid? And with that, he all of a sudden seems somehow in some queer fashion to swim off into the air. Now, what do you think of that dream, Flask? Well, I don't know. It seems a little foolish to me. Maybe, but it's made a wise man of me. But it's made a wise man of me. Do you see Ahab standing there sideways, looking over the stern? Well, the best thing you can do, Flask, is let the old man alone. Never speak to him back, whatever he says to you. Hello, what's that he shouts? Hark! Mastheads there, look sharp, all of ye! There are whales hereabout. If you see a white one, split your lungs for 'em. A white whale. Did you mark that, man? Look ye, there's something special in the wind. There's something special in the wind. There's something special in the wind. Oh, yes. Oh, wonderful. The inspiration of Mount Greylock. Okay, now I have a very, very short song to play, which is a must play. Now, this is a song which was sung. It was sung on both the Orca and the Pequod. Perfect, right? Of course. Farewell and adieu, ye fair Spanish ladies. Farewell, farewell and adieu, ye ladies of Spain. For we've received word to sail for old England, and we hope it's short-lived to see you again. They'd fall in love with the women, you see. Farewell and adieu, ye fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, ye ladies of Spain. For we've received word to sail for old England, and we hope it's short-lived to see you again. Oh, yes, such good fun. Okay, one more short song. This is very, very important. Now, this is about another ship that sailed the great oceans, the raw oceans with all the power. But this is not the Pequod. This ship is the Minnow. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale, the tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard a tiny ship. Shape was a mighty sailor man, the skipper brave and sure. 5 passengers set sail that day for a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour.
The weather started getting rough, tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost. The minnow would be lost. The ship went down the shore of this uncharted desert isle, with Gilligan, the skipper too, the millionaire and his wife, the movie star, Professor and Marianne,